All right, welcome everybody. It's 6 o'clock. We're gonna go ahead and get started. Could I get a roll call, please?
Yes, Falkingham,
Here.
Holman, Kirk,
Here.
Matthews,
Yes.
Perkin, Ryan,
Here.
Tipton,
Here.
Sapermang, Starworks. Okay, we
And
do
I'm
have-
here too, Holman. You can put Holman down.
And I got Holman too, great. We do have a quorum and we can start.
All right, item number one is planning for the 2021-22 school year for South Walton Schools full-time in-person learning plan. Take it away, Mr. Cunin.
Okay, so what we planned this evening is just a brief presentation that really is just the highlights of the plan that you've already received. We'll make sure this presentation also goes onto our website. And I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. And then once we're done, there'll be a time for just questions and board discussion. So. Okay. And there we are. Okay, so it's been a lot of work going on over the last several months as we continue to try to plan for September. And we've gone through many different ideas, thoughts, measurements, and we've continued to keep track of the evolving guidance from both US CDC, Maine CDC, and Maine DOE. Some of that guidance changed as recently as this afternoon at 2 o'clock. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we get into it. But we hope this gives you a sense of what we're hoping for September. As we developed this, we really looked at how we hold health and safety of students and staff as our primary consideration. That's been our driving consideration all year long. And we've been able to operate school on a regular and consistent basis. Unfortunately, not as much in person as we would have liked, but we were able to be very, very consistent throughout. We also hope that that by design, this really does ensure equitable access to opportunity and is flexible based on what might be happening. No, that's going the wrong direction. Our planning cycle really involved a lot of research and development by our district health staff, the nursing staff, working with our school physician, educator leadership teams, and we've also conducted family and staff surveys, first in April and then more recently. And all of that led to some plan development, and then having that plan worked through our advisory committee, which has been meeting consistently monthly all year long, and then sending the plan out to families and to staff on May 19th to get additional public input, which we did through a survey, and then also an opportunity this evening, and we've made this workshop available to families and to staff as well. And hopefully this would lead to school board approval of a plan at the June 14th meeting. We started this planning really at the very beginning of the year, but it really hit into higher gear in really March and April. Then we had it finalized, the draft by mid-May, community feedback. This is our school board workshop, school board approval, and then return to in-person learning next fall. As we looked at possible plans, we really looked at fairly similar lenses that we looked at last summer for thinking about all of our options. That by design, it needed to strive to ensure equitable access, that it needed to adhere to the practices and protocols outlined by the CDC, and that our health staff will be in place and these can be followed. But that the changes next year, our criteria was the plan had to allow students to be in person 5 days per week. We needed to keep the ability to plan for periodic remote or hybrid if public health advisories indicate. We hope that's not the case, and it must be doable and sustainable. And we think the plan that we've come up with really does meet all of these criteria. As I noted at the start, we did conduct family surveys in late April, and we received almost 1,400 responses. And for each response, it was one student, and the surveys went out in multiple languages, and we got responses in multiple languages, which was really wonderful, and that's really thanks to a number of folks who really helped us with that, but in particular, Andy Wallace and Jody Mezzanotti really made that happen. We were encouraged that, as of the date of the survey, and again, this is before the recent decrease in cases in Cumberland County and in Maine. Even at that point, nearly 84% felt comfortable or very comfortable returning to school full time, and only a little over 2% felt extremely uncomfortable or worried. Now, we certainly need to listen to those even 2% and try to help to support them, but that was certainly encouraging as we were developing a plan. While really a large percent really indicated that hybrid learning had gone either okay or had gone very well or great, so 70% were in that okay or better. The comments were clear throughout that we received, dozens and dozens and dozens of comments indicating that strong desire to return to full-time in-person learning. And there really were a broad range of comments that assisted in planning, and I believe that was all of that was shared with the board when I shared the link to the responses to staff several weeks ago. We also did staff surveys at the same time and received almost 450 responses, and that's out of about 650 full or part-time and substitute staff. And at that point, it was really interesting that at that point, 97% of staff indicated they either are or will be vaccinated by September. There was 2% that were saying they were going to, plan to do it over the summer. But the rest were saying, they had either been fully vaccinated or one shot. So at this point, that means that out of those responding, about 95% are now fully vaccinated. Now, we can't assume that same high rate of vaccination is true of the staff who did not respond to the survey, but I doubt that's zero. So I think right now it's pretty safe to assume that well over 80% of our staff, are fully vaccinated or will be fully vaccinated by September. And, and that's a good number. It likely is higher than that, but I think a conservative estimate would be that. And at that time, before the recent decline in cases, 96% noted that they felt safe or comfortable, or even relatively safe and comfortable returning to in-person instruction full-time in the fall. But then there were really, pages and pages of comments that provided useful ideas that will support and did support our ongoing planning and influenced some of the decisions, that we made as we considered, various options. So that brings us to sort of the highlights of the plan. And again, if you're following along at home and you go to the website tomorrow at some point, this will be up, and there is that link right here to the SBSD reopening plan draft. That the highlight is we are going to reopen all schools to in-person instruction 5 days per week for all students with regular school hours. We are not going to be offering a distance learning option for 21-22. We felt to really pull off opening in person 5 days per week and be ready to be flexible with staffing, with covering for substitutes, with keeping our group size reasonable, that we really couldn't do both well. And so we decided to put our eggs in the basket of full in-person. And there are options if there is a small percentage of families who don't feel comfortable. There are virtual options in Maine that they can avail themselves. We just won't be the ones doing that. We are utilizing federal funding for additional staffing, and that's through the ARP. We haven't actually received an application yet. We've received our allocation amount. We've done the first 2 stages of applying for that, but we're now waiting for that final stage so we can apply, for those funds. And so staffing will be one of the keys in each building, particularly at the elementary level, to ensure adequate, the appropriate class sizes and appropriate backup, but also to be able to offer additional support, as students return to school, both learning support and really, really importantly, social emotional support. We also needed to purchase additional furniture. In some cases, we needed desks and other supplies, and also to make facility improvements that are related to health and safety. And we'll continue to work on those. Tony's got a very long list of projects that we're working on this summer, and that will continue, right into the fall. We'll also really look at utilizing federal funding to ensure services to provide equitable access to opportunity through additional in-school support, after-school support, and summer learning programs and supports. Now, we're not really looking at extensive summer programs this summer because, frankly, it would be rather hard to staff them. People are exhausted. And, with it still being somewhat uncertain in terms of how we will operate, we decided that we would put more investment towards summer 2022 and summer 2023, but that's something we'll be utilizing federal funding for. That shouldn't have happened. We'll go back to this. There we go. Continuing on, students will continue to be in some cohorts, but there'll be larger cohorts, but that still will enable us to do contact tracing as needed if and when there are cases. Thankfully, our case rate in Cumberland County is down to a rolling 7-day average of a little under 3, which we haven't seen since mid-October of 2020. So we're encouraged by that, and it's important to note that below 3 as a rolling 7-day average is in the context of all the adults or most of the adults being vaccinated. So we're in a much better situation as we head into the fall of 2021. We have had to make some difficult choices that are related to COVID, but are also related to enrollment, as we've talked about at many board meetings. We're simply seeing housing added in the Skillen neighborhood, but we also needed to create class sizes that could meet the distancing requirements, which were in effect at the time we developed the plan. And while they might not be in effect, it's still worth holding on to in case there is a spike in cases and those distancing requirements are reinstated. But we will need to move 3 5th grade classes at Skillen to Memorial, and Ms. Connolly and Dr. Stern have been working really hard on that, and I think have really solid plans in place. And some of the furniture we're purchasing is to make that move possible. And some of the staffing we'll be providing is to support that move. And we also, in the end, needed to do the same at Brown School with Mahoney. And Ms. Jones and Ms. Stilfen have been working very carefully together to plan that. And we also needed to move one of the skill and pre-K classroom over to Brown. And then we're looking at some facility work over at Brown to really make that move possible. While COVID was a reason behind that move, it was not the only reason. Really, when we look at the Main Street apartments, when we look at the Avesta housing on Westbrook, when we look at Clark's Pond, we really need to be mindful of the crowding at Skillen. And this was a move we felt we needed to make now so that the district didn't need to make this kind of a move mid-year. All other schools are projected to have adequate space. And we also are really looking forward to getting back to a full extracurricular and co-curricular activity program, following whatever guidance there is at the time. And we think things will be, a lot more normal. In terms of health and safety, we'll continue to follow all Maine CDC guidance and the Maine DOE 6 requirements. Now, if you click on these links, they may still have the old guidance, but new guidance came out at 2 p.m. Today, which did change things. And it really, for summer school programs, said that if you participate in the pooled testing program, you do not need to adhere to any distancing guidance, though masks still will be required, and also said that they'll be lifting distancing requirements pre-K to 12, whether or not folks are participating in pooled testing for September. We think it's prudent to consider whether or not that will still be the case in August, and so we think it's wise to sort of hold on to the plans as we've created them. But it will, if those distancing requirements are relaxed or stay relaxed, we'll really be able to shift the classrooms to look much more like they've always looked, and move things around. And so we'll be thrilled if it is relaxed. Another thing we have to look at, we have not yet seen a changed standard operating procedure for when students will need to be quarantined, or non-vaccinated individuals will need to be quarantined if there are cases of COVID. And that is really the other half of the story to changing the distancing guidance, because if that doesn't relax as well, and we hope whatever moves are made are based on public health guidance and what the science is telling us to do. It won't matter that we've relaxed the guidance if we then have to quarantine more folks, because we've gone back entirely to normal operations. As of the writing of this plan, the 6-foot distancing requirement for us unmasked students while eating was enforced. That may change, and I think that's just a thing to note, that this will continue to evolve, and our nurses will continue to monitor this. Our plan right now is to prepare for a range of eventualities for the fall, including getting our nurses back together in mid-August to review our family handbooks and our staff handbooks to make sure the guidance is current as of that time. We also have continued to explore pooled testing. We are not going to be recommending pooled testing at the middle school or high school levels, because we think the level of vaccination of both students and staff will be high enough so that it is not an option that is necessary. It's something we'll continue to look at the elementary school to see if there are strong public health reasons to do it, and we'll prepare in case we do need to move in that direction. But what we will do is make sure that we're able to participate in what's called binax testing. And when we get into discussion, if there are questions about that, Sue Heeshan's here and can answer what that means to get ready for binax testing and how that might be helpful on on a case-by-case basis to help us maintain smooth operations as a mitigation strategy. And of course, we absolutely plan to maintain our current level of nursing staff with 1 full-time nurse in each elementary and middle school and 2 nurses at the high school. And Jen tomorrow will be taking over as nurse coordinator upon Sue Heeshen's retirement. And Sue and Jen are working closely together to make that a really smooth transition. And then we're going to continue to strongly encourage vaccination for all staff, students, community members as it becomes available. We've got our second day tomorrow, where we'll have about 130 plus students getting their second shot of Pfizer tomorrow. And then, certainly we'll try to keep the community informed of vaccination options for them so we can get that number as high as possible. We still anticipate needing families' help with transportation for 1 more year. If the guidelines do not change, they may change, and that will be very helpful. Over the summer, we'll be working on contacting families who are eligible for transportation to determine if they really are going to require busing so that we can set up our routes in the most efficient way possible and maximize our use of the buses. This does not impact special education students who have transportation written into their IEPs because they'll receive transportation as specified in their IEP. However, if parents want to transport students, when it is feasible, that would be great. And parents can reach out to their child's case manager if they're not sure if transportation's in the IEP. So that is that broad, quick overview. And again, I said we have principals at every level, along with Sue Heeshen, Megan Welter, Jody Mezzanotte, Andy Wallace, and we're all available to answer questions. And so I'll stop the screen share.
Hey, Ken, one question I thought of right off the bat, with 5th grade moving to the middle schools, are they going to stay on elementary time or middle school time?
They are elementary students. They
Okay.
are the students who are at Memorial are Skillen students and will maintain the elementary time. The students who are coming from Brown are Brown students. Their classroom just happens to be a little bit further away than it was.
All right.
But absolutely, they're elementary students. So, Mr. Matthews, I'll let you be the one to call on people, and then I'll either answer questions or farm it out to the administrators that are here.
Go ahead, Jen. Kirk.
Hi, I just have a quick question because we have 5th graders that come here for aftercare and before care. Will there be bus services for the kids that are in the middle school now to the Lighthouse daycare? Do we know anything about that yet?
I mean, I know we've thought through that a little bit at Skillen, and it's just going to be on their same buses. The bus will stop at Skillen first and drop the K to 4 off, and then go on to Memorial to drop off the 5th graders and reverse, at the end of the day. So their busing really shouldn't change at all. Whatever they do now, they'll be doing the same because they're still on the elementary buses.
Okay, and it's just for Brown because we don't do Skillen because Skillen doesn't take a bus here. So it would just affect Brown. So
Yeah.
they would be able to have a ride here as normal on the bus.
Whatever they have normally done as Brown students, they'll be doing because they're still Brown students. It's just the bus
Perfect.
will have an extra stop.
Perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead, Jen Ryan.
Yeah, so as far as the middle schools, the 5th graders at the middle schools are concerned, I had heard from a parent, it sounded like the Brown communication included some shuttling back and forth between Brown and Mahoney on some days. I guess my initial thought in reading it was that they would be at the middle school the full day. So in both instances, for the kids at Memorial and the kids at Mahoney, will they be transporting like back and forth between the schools for various reasons, or they will just be at one location all day?
No, it's a really good question. I'm going to have Alexis start off and talk about how that is going to work at Brown and what the reasoning is to what they worked out. And then I'll have Bethany talk a little bit about how it's working over at Skill and Memorial.
Okay, great. So with Brown, or with the rollout at Skillen, that was actually done when Ken pushed out the initial plan for reopening for the fall. And Brown's wasn't determined until, just, I guess, 2 weeks ago now, that would be occurring. So I had the advantage of hearing the feedback that Bethany got from the students at Skillen when she went into the classrooms and had a chance to speak with them about the transition and see, what kind of concerns they had, or, things that they felt they were going to miss out on. And one of the things that they said, from a fifth grader's perspective, was recess on the Skillen playground. So when I went into planning for Brown School students going to Mahoney, I tried to prioritize, well, how can I get them back to Brown for a portion of the day in a way, though, that wouldn't interrupt their schedule a lot, or waste a lot of time on transitions. So what I worked out with Carrie, Mrs. Stelfen, is that the students would be eating lunch in the cafe. They would start out their day at Mahoney on Brown School time. So they would arrive after the Mahoney students were all settled in their classrooms, starting their day, and then have class, eat lunch in the cafeteria. And then after lunch, which would be around 1:15, go back, get packed up, and get on a bus to come back down to Brown. So they'd come down to Brown, have recess on the playground, the typical, 25 minutes that all elementary students get, and then would have their specials to end the day. So their special area classes, and then would be dismissed from Brown. So they would be riding the bus with their siblings, get to still use the playground, get to still access specials in their special area classes and utilize the library at Brown, still get to do some of the jobs that they look forward to in fifth grade, such as like the flag, getting to take the flag down at the end of the day, participate in our whole school meetings that we have. So I made adjustments like that intentionally to make sure that they were still a part of the Brown School community. So there really isn't much of a back and forth. It's more just at 1:30, they would be getting on a bus and coming back down to Brown to end their day.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Any questions for Alexis before I talk about Skillen? Okay, so at Skillen, it's a little bit different because we're just that much closer. We're really just across the way, and it's a pretty quick walk between the two schools. And actually, before we even made this decision, Dr. Stern and I had talked about sharing field space between the middle school and Skillen because they've lost a lot of their outdoor space because of construction. So that was already something that we were going to do anyway. So like Alexis just talked about, the kids will follow the Skillen schedule. And so they'll arrive after the middle school students are settled in their classrooms. And the biggest difference probably is that the specials teachers from Skillen will go over to Memorial for specials classes, which the kids are super excited about because they get to have gym in the Memorial gym. Our schedules just kind of aligned magically, and there was no middle school class happening at the time that we really needed gym to happen for our fifth grade. And so they're pretty excited about that. And the cafeteria worked out, but for recess, they will be able to come to Skillen. And one thing my students had a lot of questions about was the library. Are we going to be able to use Skillen's library or Memorial's library? And the answer is both. And I envision that they will sometimes come over to Skillen and access the library in person. And we've learned all sorts of unique and interesting remote ways to connect students and teachers this year. And then certainly for things like our whole school community meetings, which fingers crossed we'll be able to do those in person again next year. They'll come over for those and be the leaders, still the leaders of our school in fifth grade, and get to do all of those things because, like Mr. Cunin said, they're still Skillen students for sure. So hopefully that answers those questions.
Yeah, thank you.
I know one other concern folks had about that move to the 5th grade is, what about related services? And if students were getting special education services, will they still be getting special education services? And, Kat may be able to chime in, but I know she and the special education staff have been looking at the caseload in 5th grade. I don't know if Kat, if you want to make a quick comment about that.
Sure. Unfortunately, this year of it happening, we don't have a large number in either one of those 5th grades, which a different year could be very different. And so for some of the related services, it might be a provider at the middle level, but it will really depend on the service load and the caseload. Though the special education teacher is very likely to be somebody other than the middle school folks. But we're looking at those obviously individually, but all of their services absolutely they'll still be getting all of it.
Yeah, and that's when I talked earlier about staffing. There is some additional staffing that's needed to just make it work, because it's one thing when the ed tech is in the building and trying to support multiple classes in the building. It's a different thing when 3 of those classes, even though they're not that far away, they're not right there, and those teachers don't have as much support. And so we have, with federal funding, added some some additional staff supports to make the move possible. Elise.
I just got the little warning that my internet's unstable, so I hope it doesn't get too weird. Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. I just am wondering about ongoing communication with parents. At some point it's not your responsibility. This summer can, that's on some day. That is in our future, near future, but I don't know. My impression is that a lot of parents are walking around now thinking, oh, thank God, everything's going to be normal. Like, I kind of hear that. And so how will they definitely be communicated with to say, okay, this, and this thing are different, and please pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think because some of that's going to be very specific school by school. And so already, Ms. LaForge at the high school has been sending a series of messages out to families saying, this is what you can expect. And I think other principals, will be doing the same. But certainly if there are broad district things, the district will continue to be sending communications, out, to that sort. Both Megan and Andy have helped with those communications throughout. Megan, particularly with the full distance students this year. I don't know if you're quite aware of just how many communications and how regularly those went out, and how the feedback then helped us to strengthen the program over the course of the year. But I bet it's well into the dozens of regular communications that went out to those full distance students. So, that communication still going to be, really important. And for some families that will feel like enough, and for some families it will not. And we have always been able to, try to work with those families and find ways to communicate with them as well. But good point.
So, Sue, this is probably your last time with us, with all principals and everybody. So thank you from the bottom of all our hearts for your many, many, many years of service, and just being totally coolio. You are a special person, and you have been phenomenal to the district, and not only as the head cheese, but just as a friend and as a person. And we are definitely losing something special when you walk out those doors. So thank you for everything that you've done for us.
Thank you, Dick. I appreciate your kind words. It's bittersweet. I feel so fortunate to be able to make such a decision at a time when I'm healthy and feel a lot younger than I actually am. And that said, I'm, reflecting on how much it has meant to be part of this district and, the great teams that work together to educate and care for our kids. And I will consider it always one of the greatest privileges that I've ever experienced. So, and, I've said to the other nurses, I'll only come back if you need my help. And next year might be a year when we all need to help each other, because I'm wondering if it's going to be a little harder in some ways, with everybody adjusting together to not quite normal, but sort of normal. So one of my favorite book titles is Here If You Need Me. So that I'll let that be my parting statement. Here if you need me.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
also want to know, because I'm not sure I'm going to see the principals and the administration, Kat, everybody. I know it's been a difficult year, and some of the questions that you've had to field and some of the situations that you've had to deal with have been above and beyond the call of duty. I know that you're all so dedicated, and this goes out to Kat and this goes out to Megan as well. You guys have really, it's been a crazy year, and you can't plan for something like this, but I know that all the board members are behind you, and I know that it's very much appreciated, and we look forward to making it go as smoothly as we can in September for you, even with the changes that we're making. And I'm sure you're going to be fielding a lot of questions over the summer. So thank you very much for everything. Does anybody have any more questions on the plan?
I might have a couple of questions of folks that I want them to just touch on. Just so that we're hearing about some things that we're considering or we're working on that you may hear about, board members may hear about in the news or in the public. One of the big questions is testing in schools and how that's going to proceed. You'll read in the news reports that there's strong encouragement for all schools where the children are not yet eligible for vaccination, i.e. elementary schools, to participate in a pooled testing program. And I've sent some information on pooled testing previously with some links that you can use to look on that. And I just want to underscore that we have continued to examine that really carefully. We've looked at what other districts are doing. We're looking at the public health reasons for moving forward or not moving forward. And Jody and I met with Sue Heeshan and Jen tomorrow earlier in the week to sort of review that. And so I was just going to ask Sue to just speak for a moment about our approach to both pool testing and then preparing for a more limited testing. So Sue, if you could.
Sure. So we've had misgivings about testing in our schools because testing has been so widely available in the community, and not once this year has a family expressed a barrier to accessing testing. So we felt it was tantamount to inviting sick kids to school, because the thought would be that would be the easiest way to get a test. That's the reason we haven't done it so far. Specifically for pool testing, it's a huge effort. It's a weekly disruption of at least 30% of staff and students. That's the threshold for accessing the so-called benefits of pool testing. And the benefits are reported to be that if you're participating, you don't have to do the distancing, and anyone who's part of a pool does not have to quarantine from school if the positive, if they're in the pool with the positive test. So very limited benefits and a lot of effort, concerns about privacy, because once a positive test is known, and it would be because it's a designated pool of students, it just felt really messy and not great return, because we've had such great success with not having positive cases at school. That said, at the elementary level, without the benefit of vaccinations and without, until today's announcement at 2 o'clock that distancing may not be part of the landscape in September, there was a thought that we might all feel a little strong-armed into considering pooled testing, just to be able to access the advantage of limited distancing. So now with the news that there may not be any distancing requirement, that adds to our thinking that pool testing should be sort of a last resort for us if public health indications change. So for example, if there's a huge surge due to variants, there may be a greater need, indication for doing pool testing. What we've come up with for a plan is to position the district to be ready should pool testing really look like it's necessary. Like it might have been necessary at, late fall last year, might have been helpful, more so than now. And what that means is we need to get a waiver. It's called a CLIA waiver, and it's a waiver to conduct lab tests outside of a formal lab. That's a simple application and fee process, and that positions us then to be able to do rapid antigen testing at school. And one of the reasons that may be a more effective limited testing strategy is, just at the elementary school, although it might be helpful throughout, we're seeing some of the testing sites closing. Not just like at the airport, they're not doing testing anymore. Things have started to be rerouted. With all the kids coming back and parents going back to school back to work more fully, we're all a little concerned that the vigorous screening to keep sick kids home might change a little bit. So if we had the capacity, if a child got sick at school and it didn't look like it was going to be easy for a parent to get a test for their child, if we had the ability to do that at school, we could make some decisions right then and there about what's needed next, depending on the results. So positioning to be able to have that tool available in the toolbox is really where we're headed. And if we do that and pool testing becomes more of an urgent situation, that's the step you have to take before you can register to start pool testing anyway. So we're really kind of taking a be prepared and wait and see and monitor approach. We've talked about this with our school physician, that will continue as well, just to make sure that we're ready, but we're not taking on what isn't necessary to the students, to the students' well-being. I was at a national webinar yesterday, and it was about pool testing. And one of the strategies that was discussed around, how do you keep track of COVID activity in a group? And what came up was wastewater testing and surface testing. That's been done in other settings like college dorms, and that can trigger focused testing once a level of COVID is detected, but it's not the intrusive, labor-intensive weekly process that pool testing is. So I'd say we're going to be keeping an eye on a bunch of different things that may be coming down the pike that help us get through until kids under 12 can be vaccinated, because COVID will still be around. Even if we're not distancing, we will be contact tracing. So we need to make thoughtful decisions about our cohorts, so that we don't set up for more quarantine than is necessary, as an example. So even though it's great to hear that there's no distancing, there will still be contact tracing if there are positive cases. So it's going to be a real balancing act next year, much more so than this year. This year felt more crisp and clear boundaries. And I think next year we're going to have to embrace the nuance. So I hope that's helpful. I don't know if there are questions specific to what I've just said, but.
Go ahead, Jen Ryan.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure I was clear because I wasn't sure if you said this. So apologies if you said it clearly and I just missed it. The waiver that you were speaking about that we would need to do if we decided to go down that route, are we applying for that waiver so that we have it in case we do it? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so we apply for the, and I'll be doing that right about the time that, Timothy will start, so that he gets named on the application, because you have to name the superintendent on the application. And we're not going to be doing testing before July 1. But
so we're just doing it and then we'll have it in our pocket in the event that we need it. Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure I understood correctly.
So there are a couple steps. We are doing that. And then in August, the nurses will come together and then they'll do the required training. Even if we haven't made a decision that we're going to move ahead, they'll do the required training in mid-August during the same day that they review our family handbooks and our staff handbooks, just to make sure we're really positioned to move quickly if that in fact becomes the right way to go. So we want to take all of those steps. And then if pool testing becomes something that public health folks really think will be impactful for us, we will have done everything that we need to submit the application and to get rolling, because that would actually happen. That would be able to happen fairly quickly. That's not an onerous application. That's just saying, yes, we want to, pretty much. The CLIA waiver there's a little more involved, but even that's not that involved.
And then I guess one other thing is, are there other school policies that would need to be updated to reflect that, so that there wouldn't be any issues with anything like that we would need to address if we decided to go forward with that? Are there any impacts to anything like that?
That's a really good question. I do not believe there are any school policies that would not allow us to go ahead to do the testing, because we'd only be doing something with a parent's consent. And we do provide healthcare services already with parents' consent through health plans. We do some fairly extensive nursing work that is sometimes way beyond what you might imagine that we would do in schools, with parents' consent and under doctor's orders. So I don't think so, but Sue, I don't know if there's any.
No, that's true. We would not proceed without, acknowledging in a protocol, a nursing protocol, what the steps we are going to follow are, and, link that protocol to, for example, Maine CDC determines how you can use Binax testing in the school setting. So we would acknowledge that in a protocol. These are the only circumstances under which we would be doing that. So we would align a protocol with, the strategy of testing at school. But I don't think there's any policy that conflicts with adopting such a protocol to, as part of the overall, health and safety management under COVID.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Sue?
Okay, and I don't know if any other principals had anything else that they wanted to add about the planning at either middle school or high school. I know there's been extensive work that's going on at both, and I know both both Dr. Stern and Ms. Stilfen have been extremely welcoming and gracious of the fifth graders, maybe even covering some lunches to get to know them, because they're going to be their students soon enough. And then I know at the high school, they've had work teams going for weeks and weeks. So Ms. LaForge, maybe you can talk a little bit.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I hope that the changes at the middle and the elementary school doesn't change the day where I go and get to read to fourth graders. So that's really the most important thing to me, is that that can still happen. But I also wanted to, I have the team's met and we have a reopening plan that's just a version of the one we have for ourselves. That's going to go out to families in the next couple of days, but I thought I would wait until this meeting before sending that out, just in case there were questions that helped clarify things. I think I just want to highlight two things. One is that what went really well for us at the high school, and I think for the whole district this year, and I've met with principals every week. I know Ken's met with superintendents every week. I know that other principals are meeting with their people all since these last 15 months. We really picked a path and followed it. You did, and it was really helpful. And it's made a lot of sense, so that as we plan for the fall, we're trying to do something similar. And so and one thing that I think people are going to have to wrap their heads around is they're not a remote option. Like, one thing that we've learned this year is that we do our best work together. And that's not a surprise to those of us who learn together, like we're social creatures. But we are not unaware of how much of a change that might be to some students who had some good experiences. So I will just highlight that the high school is going to be open the week of August 18th through the 20th, which is preseason week. And we've got 3 days a week where we're open in the mornings and 3 days a week we're open in the afternoons. And there'll be older students there to, you can just stop by. There's no sign up. You just come by during the hours and you can see your school and find your places, maybe find your favorite book in the library, whatever it is that you need to do. And we'll have some places where you can sign up for more information about clubs. And we'll have, hopes and fears wall where you can put sticky notes. So to try to, invite people in early, and then there'll be orientation. But just people out there listening, if the goal is to get us back together. And if we need help getting kids acclimated, we can have some staged entries, like we can do what we need to do, but be thinking now about how you get back into the high school. And we've got a lot of ways of supporting you, but we'd love to hear from you if you're worried. So that's it. I think I was just going to say that.
Okay. Then I just want to end with just 3 quotes. The high school sent a survey out to students to talk about their experience for the year and what went well, what didn't go well, and so I thought, because I think their voices actually speak for elementary and middle school students as well. One student wrote, school caused so much stress that it wasn't actually helpful. And we did hear that from some students. And the work that Michelle's just talked about is to try to address that need for kids. And we also have, Mr. Brenner, who will be working all summer on those kids who've been high truancy kids, those disengaged kids at the high school, to set up really personalized plans for pulling kids back in, because we're really concerned when any student says that we weren't helpful, because we want to be helpful. And I think that's happening in a different way at each level, elementary, middle and high. But another one that was a lot of students said in various ways, but this student was more eloquent, was, I also want to thank all the staff for working extra hard when they could have just as easily given up. It was a hard time for everyone, and for everyone's effort, I am eternally grateful. And that's from one of our students. And so if one of our students can say that, then we must have done something okay. But the one that really, I think, got both Michelle and I, that was one of those, sometimes young people are wise beyond their years kind of thing. This is a direct quote. I did not embellish this at all. Learn to value what is there instead of finding flaws in life, because our luck is the desire of thousands. Learn to value what is there instead of finding flaws in life, because our luck is the desire of thousands. Now, from other answers. I'm not going to try to identify the student, but from other things that student said, this is clearly an English language learner who has had life experiences perhaps that are different than many of our students and many of us. And so he is really valuing, or she, I'm not sure, is really valuing what school's been able to provide to them. And we're going to try to do that again come September, just more in person. Okay.